Right now, somewhere in Kansas City, there's a seat that doesn't officially belong to anyone yet, for a match that hasn't even been confirmed yet, and people are already paying more than most cars cost. That's not an exaggeration. That's the actual ticket market for a game that only exists in theory right now. A possible quarterfinal, a possible final meeting between Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. And the moment that possibility became real on paper, a price tag attached to it became almost impossible to believe. We're talking about resale listings climbing past $3,000 for the cheapest available seat, with plenty sitting between $5,000 and $10,000, and some premium sections pushing past $13,000 for a single ticket, for a match that, as of today, doesn't technically exist yet on the official bracket. So what's actually happening here, and why is this one fixture suddenly the center of the entire tournament's financial conversation? Let's set the stage properly, because the context matters just as much as the number itself. The 2026 World Cup is the biggest version of this tournament that's ever been staged. 48 teams, 16 host cities, 3 host nations across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and over 100 matches packed into about 5 weeks of football. It kicked off in the middle of June, and right now, we're deep into the group stage, with the tournament still working its way toward the knockout rounds. Argentina and Portugal have both been performing well enough in their groups that, on current form, they're on track to finish at the top. If that holds, and if both sides keep winning the way they have been, the bracket points toward a quarterfinal meeting in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. That single possibility, two of the greatest players the sport has ever produced, sharing a pitch one final time at a World Cup, has turned into one of the most talked about storylines of this entire tournament. Before we go further, if you're new here, this channel breaks down everything happening around FIFA 2026. The controversies, the numbers, the stories behind the headlines, so consider subscribing now so you don't miss the next one. Here's where things get interesting. This isn't just hype talk anymore. This is real money moving in real time on a match that hasn't even been locked in. Earlier in the tournament, resale prices for this hypothetical fixture were sitting closer to $2,000 at the low end. That was already considered expensive. But as both sides kept advancing and the path to Kansas City started looking more realistic, those numbers didn't just rise, they multiplied. We're now looking at a market where the cheapest available seat sits close to $4,000, and that's before you even get into the mid-tier or premium sections. Think about that for a second. This is a match that technically could still fall apart. Either team could lose in the group stage. Either team could get knocked out before the bracket ever lines up the way fans are hoping, and yet people are paying 5 figures for the chance to be there if it happens. That tells you everything about how rare this moment is considered to be. Messi is approaching this tournament in what's widely understood to be the final World Cup of his career, and Ronaldo, now in his 40s, is almost certainly in the same position. Two players who have spent 2 decades defining the modern era of the sport, who fans have compared, debated, and argued about since they were teenagers, may only get this one remaining chance to actually stand on the same field at the same World Cup. That's not something that can be replicated. That's not something FIFA's dynamic pricing model invented out of nowhere. That demand is real, and it's been building for years. But that's only part of the story. Because this fixture isn't happening in isolation, it's happening inside a tournament that's already drawing serious criticism for how it prices tickets across the board, and that context is impossible to separate from what's going on with this one match. This matters because the 2026 World Cup adopted a dynamic pricing model, similar to what you'd see with airline tickets or concert resale platforms. Prices move based on demand in real time, rather than staying fixed. Early in the buying window, some seats for marquee matches were already being listed in the thousands of dollars, even before kickoff. Lawmakers in parts of the United States raised concerns about how confusing and aggressive this pricing structure has been for ordinary fans trying to plan around it. The bigger issue is that this isn't just a Messi versus Ronaldo problem, it's a pattern. Matches involving Argentina, Brazil, and other historically dominant football nations have all seen ticket prices climb sharply once schedules and groupings were confirmed. Reports have suggested that some of the steepest single jumps came right after the tournament schedule was finalized, when fans realized exactly which teams would be playing where and exactly which legendary names they might get to see in person. Compare that to past World Cups hosted in North America. Back in 1994, the last time the United States hosted on its own, the biggest stars on the field were closer to their late 20s. This time, the two most in-demand names in the entire tournament are players whose careers started before a huge portion of the viewing audience was even born. That generational gap is part of why this feels different. It's less about who's the best player on the pitch right now, and more about a closing chapter that fans don't want to miss. If this kind of breakdown is something you're into, numbers, context, the real story behind these headlines, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps this channel keep going. Now, let's talk about what this actually means for the people at the center of it, the players and the fans. For Messi and Ronaldo, this isn't just another tournament. Every match they play right now carries the weight of being one of their last on this stage. Messi has already shown flashes of his old brilliance in the group stage, including a standout multi-goal performance that reminded everyone exactly why demand for his matches never really faded. Ronaldo, even at this stage of his career, still pulls in some of the highest valued fixtures of the entire group phase, with his matchup against Colombia in Miami reportedly seeing some of the steepest price increases of any group stage game. For fans, though, the picture is a lot less romantic. The same emotional pull that makes this potential matchup historic is the exact thing pricing a huge number of supporters out of actually being there. Ordinary fans, the kind who followed these two players for years, are now looking at a market where simply being in the stadium for that possible Kansas City night could cost more than a flight, hotel, and the rest of their World Cup trip combined. There's something a little bittersweet about that. The match exists because of decades of genuine fan passion, but the price of attending it is now shaped by exactly that same passion, turned into a financial bidding war. Would you still want to go if you had the means? Or does a price tag like that change how you feel about even wanting to be there? That's worth sitting with for a second. So where does this go from here? A few different paths are realistic. Best case, Argentina and Portugal both continue performing the way they have been, the bracket lines up the way everyone's hoping, and Kansas City quarterfinal actually happens. If that's the case, expect prices to keep climbing right up until kickoff, especially if either team picks up any kind of dramatic headline-grabbing result along the way. Some industry voices following the resale market have suggested that a confirmed matchup could push the highest listed seats even further past where they already sit today. Worst realistic case, and this is football, so it's always possible, one of these two teams loses earlier than expected and the dream matchup simply doesn't happen. If that occurs, expect a sharp drop in resale value almost overnight, because so much of this pricing is built entirely on the possibility of this specific pairing, not on the stadium or the round itself. There's also a quieter, in-between scenario. Maybe both teams advance, but face different opponents in the bracket, and Kansas City never materializes the way fans are picturing it. In that case, you'd likely see prices stabilize, fans redirect their spending toward whichever matches actually get confirmed, and the conversation shift toward the next potential milestone matchup instead. FIFA, for its part, hasn't signaled any change to its pricing approach, and there's no indication that's likely to shift mid-tournament. Whatever happens with this fixture will most likely play out entirely through natural market demand, for better or worse. So here's where that leaves us. A match that doesn't officially exist yet has already become one of the most expensive tickets of the entire World Cup, driven almost entirely by the idea that two of football's greatest ever players might share a pitch one last time. Whether or not it actually happens depends on results still to be played out over the coming days. What do you think? Is a price tag like this just the cost of witnessing football history, or has dynamic pricing pushed this completely past what's reasonable for ordinary fans? And if you had the choice, would you pay it? This story's still developing, and the bracket will get a lot clearer over the next couple of weeks, so if you want to stay on top of every twist as it happens, subscribing is the easiest way to make sure you don't miss it. As always, football never stays quiet for long.